It looks like it's going to be a day of records. First to you, Arvind, what's your sense? The bunch of announcements that came yesterday, aggressive divestment, is it giving you the confidence that this is a government that works? And would you therefore now bet on more positive policies and therefore positive markets?
Well, I mean, let's be clear, the divestment news is positive, but at the end of the day, the government is selling the best PSUs. I'm afraid I'm not sure if it's out of great conviction about privatization, or it's because the deficit otherwise is going to be completely out of control given the poor tax collection, so they had no choice. But either way, it does help bridge the gap from a government finances standpoint, but it's not a structural fix. Okay. It does fix the short term, it doesn't fix the structural problems, and that's where the other announcements are more significant. By doing, taking positive actions on the telecom sector, that's you preventing a new banking crisis generator in terms of having, NPLs generated out of the telecom sector. So that's a positive. And beyond that, we'll have to see how much, of the actions that are being taken to help lessen the impact of the NBFC crisis play out. And I think those are things that are needed. The privatization is, I guess, obviously somewhat positive for sentiment, but I think we need a broader sign that the economy is on a mend, and clearly spending more on infrastructure is more easily possible when you have significant, more money available and less strain on the deficit, which is what these privatization will allow.
Yes, Arvind, good morning. In fact, you stole my words. I was about to ask you this. On the move on telecom, does it now mean that, the worry that the market had about this being the next NPA is now totally out the window and can re-rate some of these troubled banks once again?
I think so. I think it clearly sounds like there's been 2 or 3 signs now that the government is completely understanding of the gravity of this situation, and clearly Vodafone Idea have, I think, both sets of promoters there have been very clear in their message that they are not going to be endlessly funding a loss-making and financially unviable business, and that's helped. And I think we're seeing now signs that pricing is recovering. And while I wouldn't go out and say that Vodafone Idea is completely out of the woods, but in terms of the risk of a major train wreck in terms of financial crisis generating from Vodafone Idea going bankrupt, that certainly has receded, and certainly that helps the banking sector as well as the other telecom players, and probably Vodafone Idea too.
Mm-hmm. Right, Hiren, good morning. I want to, sort of draw you in on the debate that Arvind started on the first point on divestment. Is this, a big signaling reform message, or is this just a near-term sentiment whip-up on, on a few stocks?
No, I think it's a big structural signal and reform. I think the floodgates have been opened for divestment. I think you do one, and then your inhibition to do many more goes away. I think what the market wants is that they want the government to do 1 or 2 or 3 of these successfully, and I think this has to be the way forward. I mean, this government, when they came in, they said that there's no business of the government to be in business, and there are several businesses that the private sector can run quite efficiently, and I think it's time that the government unlocked its value in these public sector units, attracted more foreign and domestic capital from the private sector, and use that money to spend on both social programs and on infrastructure. So I think this is a very welcome step. I don't think it's a stopgap arrangement. According to me, it's a big positive structural signal that is going out to the markets and to the world at large.
No, I take your point because, at least in the case of Hindustan Zinc and Balco, we clearly saw greater productivity. And maybe, therefore, for the economy as a whole, if there are more such companies coming out and are getting more productive, that's certainly a big positive. But let's wait and see. I will give the government full marks for this only if public sector banks also get privatized, at least some of them. Until now, we don't have that much faith. But Hiren, I wanted your view more on what SEBI announced yesterday. The PMS thing, is it just, coming to terms with the rupee value getting lost and therefore 25 becoming 50? I'm more interested in how you are looking at this disclosure of default once the delay in payment reaches 30 days. Is this stock market important?
Yeah, so I think the second one, taking the second one first, I think more disclosure is always good. I think the previous one left very little time for disclosure. I think here, at least, people know beforehand that there is a 30-day period. So whatever arrangements that they have to make, even if they have to with the bankers, I think 30 days is a good enough time. And I think more disclosures help in better price discovery. So, that can never be a sore point. And I think they've done a good job by enhancing disclosure. That's the way the regulations are moving. I mean, get more and more disclosures in place. As regards the PMS ticket size, I think this was coming. And as you rightly mentioned, I think the 25 lakh ticket size was like, initiated, 25 years ago when the PMS regulation started. And since then, the value of the rupee, 25 lakhs today is like probably like 5 lakhs 25 years ago. So I think, it's a very welcome step. I think we are already seeing that structurally retail money is moving to the mutual funds, and this will only enhance the push to the mutual funds. And for the PMS, they can deal with the high net worth and the ultra high net worth individuals.
Yeah, fair point. I think I hit the nail on the head. Let's talk about some more market issues. Arvind, Reliance has seen a massive rally and has become once again the market leader. Do you think it's run up ahead of itself, or does it have triggers now to perhaps stay as the market leader?
Well, I think there are two catalysts driving Reliance here. One is obviously the telecom sector looking better, and with the amount of money that Reliance has spent in Geo, where there were very little signs of much returns before this recent price increase they've taken, and now other people taking price increase, so that telecom returns are starting to look a little better. And the second is hope for an expectation for a capital infusion, whether it is by selling minority stakes in the whole Geo business, including some of the online businesses, which they've now put into a subsidiary that could attract capital, or the rumored stake in the refining sector being sold either to the Saudis or some other strategic investor. And I think either one of those would clearly be a strong help for Reliance, because the leverage in Reliance is no longer, as low as it used to be, and therefore I think those can be valuation drivers. But at this point, we think that if I'm going to play telecom, there are pure telecom plays that will get a better return. But if the capital infusion is coming, then Reliance has a lot more upside.
Hiren, so given how you summed up a lot of these developments, and you find most of them positive, structurally positive, practically at all-time highs, how much more do you give this market on the upside?
See, I think I think more than the upside, what is important is that for the breadth of the market to improve, right? And I think there is no doubt about it that this. The divestment news and the fact that the telecom sector has been given some relief would push the index up. But, I think the point is that I think from the pre-tax cut to today, what I'm seeing is that each of the stress sectors is bottoming out. I mean, you've got some resolution on the NBFC. That was a stress sector. You look at autos. I think many of the auto stocks are off their lows. Now you have telecom, which is off their lows. You have the public sector banks, which are off the lows after the SR Steel judgment. So I think one by one, sectors are forming some sort of a bottom, which is good in the sense that there is a bottom in place for at least the broader markets. Now I think we need normalization in the credit markets and growth to come back, both in consumption demand and in investments. And I think as that happens over the next couple of months and quarters, I think the direction of the broad markets will change. I think Nifty, obviously, I think there is room for upside given that the divestment is now kicked off. I hope that they are able to execute this within a given timeline.
Okay. No, Hiren, that's exactly was going to be my question. In fact, we started with that. Fewer headaches for the market with Z and maybe, the road sector getting a push. Divestment looks like all good things are coming together. What would you say, Arvind? Would you say that we are very close to all-time highs because all these steps were expected? Or do you think the road has been laid for more highs? Would you be a buyer at these levels?
Well, let's be clear that if I look at the mid-cap index, it's still 20 to 25% below its highs 2 years ago. So what you have is continuation of a very narrow leadership, which has been around for a while. So, through all the troubles and tribulations, the headline Nifty index never really came off much. So I don't think that's a meaningful measure of either how the economy is doing or how the market's doing. Therefore, I think I agree with what Hiren just said. I think it's the breadth of the rally that's going to matter, not a few headline stocks, the HDFC banks and the and the Reliances and the TCS and then a few others in HDFC driving the index higher. So I think the real issue is going to be, do you get some of the PSU banks, like State Bank and others, which have come off the bottom, make a meaningful move? Do you see some of the troubled sectors, whether it is auto, which has bounced off the bottom? Do you see a real rally, or is this a false rally? And I think we're hopeful that the worst is behind us and we will see a recovery. But let's be clear, we've been now for 5 years disappointed every year that next year is going to be much better, and it turns out to be disappointing. So the real question is, is fiscal, 20 is largely over and it's not going to be a great year, but is fiscal 21 going to give us the promised land or not? We've been optimistic and wrong before. Eventually, I guess we and the market will be right. And given the magnitude of the sell-off sell-off in business fundamentals or economic fundamental deterioration this year, it becomes much easier from a comparison standpoint for FY21 to be better, given how bad economic data has been this year.
Well, Hiren, a similar question to you. Would you therefore start buying the very mid-caps that you say are still not rising? I mean, would you start buying companies like NCCIRB because of the concession announced in the road sector? Telecom, of course, there are some mid-cap, at least there's one of them in the mid-cap. Then, other sectors, like say power. Would you start buying PSU banks? Would you start buying any of the mid-cap stocks? Hiren? Hiren can't hear us? Okay, we have to redial. But Arvind, a similar question to you. Would you dip into these mid-caps?
Yes, actually, we've been dipping into mid-caps for the last couple of months, and we've been adding to positions for the reason that we saw, a lot of the bad news fundamentally, getting less bad and getting towards the bottom faster, including names in the auto-related space. And I think that that we would be selective. We're not going to take a broad basket and go buy everything. But if you were buying PSU banks, which we don't own right now, we just go for one or two of the best PSU banks and not go down the quality spectrum. So I don't think this is the time to be super brave, but there's a lot of opportunities to be made in higher quality mid caps, which could benefit from a recovery. And I guess we have made a kind of an indirect play on the telecom space in the last 2 or 3 weeks. And again, we were hopeful that the signs were pointing in that direction. But I think that yes, these are areas where things are looking better, and it is time to be a little more bold, because I think the market has gone nowhere for a couple of years as far as mid caps are concerned, and I think we're getting towards the end of that trouble period for mid caps.